I recently moved back with my parents, and of course, my parents live in a society that I have not been living in for the last 5 years or so. And people are still here, people are still living their lives, right? But now they're like, oh, Kushbu is back, so what's going on? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
Like, what's her plan? Like,
Yeah.
so they're like, oh, so is she working here? And I'm like, bitch, I just left a job and came back. Like, who is going to give me a job in this pandemic? Like, so quick. So, yeah, but people want to know, like, what am I going? What are my plans? And my mom has been, like, dodging these questions. And she was like, yeah, she's planning
Something.
something. like, so my mom has no idea. I'm just living at home, like, trying to figure this out. But people want answers. And it hasn't been, like, I don't know, 6 months. I think it just has been like 5 months I've been back. Now I feel like kind of settled in. But this is like me when I came like 1 month. It wasn't even 1 month, and people were asking my parents, what's now?
Yeah.
Like, what's her
Or
next?
even like that sort of conversation starts like probably even before you arrived, like when you were just like planning to come.
Yeah. People used to ask, is she planning to come?
Yeah.
Will she come? She won't come. They're already commenting, like, oh, now that she has moved there, she won't come. And it's like, bitch, why are you making my parents worry that I won't come back to them? Even if there has been no conversation regarding it. Like, my mom already knows, like, 5 years ago when I moved initially, that I would be coming back. And we have this conversation multiple times that I will be coming back. Then why are you putting that doubt in my parents' heads that I won't be coming back? Just because your child didn't, that means I won't. Like, but that kind of arises thought about like privacy, because we are an introverted family. We don't like to be the topic of the conversation or tell people about our business. But I want to talk about a healthy type of privacy. Um, and what I mean by healthy privacy is people not trying to dig in your life. Like, they're not like actively being like, tell us what's happening in your life. And us being a conversation,
Yeah.
and them having satisfaction, them knowing what's going in our
Yeah.
lives. Like, I would rather have this relationship with my neighbors or the society we live in, or whoever we come across. If I have a good relationship with you, I will voluntarily tell them that this is what I'm going through, this is what I've planned, if I feel that comfortable with telling a third person. Because I barely open with my parents.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
until I'm like 100% sure something is happening, I don't tell my parents. How can I tell a random person that this is what I'm planning to do? Because they will chime in like, oh, like, they will comment on it. And it's good to give someone your advice or what you think about it, but it's only when I have given you the news, when I wanted to tell you. But
I totally
people
agree
trying
on
to
that.
know.
Yeah. Like for
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
privacy is like I am if I want to share things about my life, then I will share it in my own time. Like don't force it upon me.
yeah.
And um and it's like this idea of privacy goes into like, oh, you're being so secretive, like about your life. Like,
Oh, yeah,
it's a secret.
yeah,
I'm like, privacy and
yeah.
secret, there's like different things. Like, I'm not trying to hide something. I just don't want my affairs to be out there, like among people I don't even know. Because in our society, it's like if I tell someone like I barely know, they will tell someone else, they will tell someone else. And by the end of the day, like the whole community would know my story.
She will
Yeah.
know. Yeah, yeah. And that's the trust I need to have in you, that you won't go and blabber in front of like 100 people, like, oh, this is happening in their lives, or this is going on, or like whatever it is. Like, I think that's what also stops me from sharing with other people. Because so because if you tell someone what you're planning with your life, people keep asking for updates. And if you don't have an update, like, okay, for example, like, oh yeah, I am planning to get into a college, this is my PTSD. I'm so happy I finished my education
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
thing. But I remember being an undergrad and like planning to go for masters and trying to fill in exams, and they are hard. I am not the brightest in color in the box, like to give these entrance exams to get like a 98 percentile or whatever. So getting into a college is good college is hard. Getting into college is not hard, but getting into a good college is pretty hard. My mom used to say after I asked 100 times that yeah, she's giving entrance exam, and then people want update like, oh, has she gotten into a college, or has she been accepted, or how is her preparation going, and where she's getting into, and blah blah blah. That added pressure on me to perform well, and I used to cry a lot because of feeling being under this pressure, even though the society is not putting it, my parents themselves is not putting it, but I don't know, psychologically it was affecting me, because I'm like, if I didn't perform now, what will my parents will answer to these random people, I don't know, but I'm kind of a representation for them in the society after a while, and it kind of added that pressure that I need to be this person who perform well, and being the only child, it kind of puts extra, because everyone is like, oh, that's she's only like, you know what I mean, like it got a little tricky for me regarding that.
So when I was researching about this topic, I came across Hofstede's cultural dimension model. Have you
Now.
studied about that? No? Okay, so we had to study about this in business. And it's about kind of how culture, society is and value is tied together, and how a business is affected by all of those things, or how a business is like could be done in that particular sectors is affected by all of this. And one of the aspects was individualism versus collectivism. It's harder, it's a
Yeah.
tongue twister. But so individualistic societies are where people are considered good if they are like strong, self-reliant, assertive, independent, like the
Yeah.
Western world. And in collectivist cultures, it's more about like self-sacrificing, depending, generous, and helping others for
Yeah.
the greater good, or like for a better outcome of the society. And both India and Nepal are very highly rated on
Yeah.
collectivist society. And this is the idea where like you belong to a
Yeah.
family, and that family belongs to a community, and that community belongs to a
Yeah.
country,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So like when you first introduce yourself in our culture, like you say like your name is this, and I am a family member of like this family,
Yeah.
or stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's whether like in the
Yeah.
Western world, meanwhile it's more about like
That's
I
it.
am this, like,
Yeah.
and that's it, like no families or stuff like that. And this got me thinking how because we are a part of a community, like so many of our decisions are kind of like influenced by the opinion of what others
Yeah.
will think about us, or like how our family
Yeah.
thinks about us, or like how we need to work towards our family being
Yeah.
happy. Instead of like self happiness, it's more about like
That's how we
family
become people
happiness.
pleasers. We want our parents to be proud
Yes.
of us, and then we also want them to be proud of other, like in front of other people, and other people being like, "Oh, you have such a nice
Yeah.
kid. He does everything." Blah blah blah. Like it's like a chain of thought. Like it's like just a chain of people just being proud of you, and you just feel like dopamine or
Yeah.
something, like, or being like, oh, see, like everyone is like
Yeah.
praising me, and
Yeah. And I guess that's where all this like competition also
yeah.
arises from, because everybody's like comparing themselves to each
Yeah.
other. Instead, like in the Western world, what happens is like you are unique, and whatever you do
Counts,
like
yeah.
counts. Meanwhile, like in our culture, it's
You
more
are a
about
piece of
like,
shit if you
competing. Like you do this
yeah.
better than this.
you
Yeah.
you're not good enough until you beat that person, like, or something
Yeah.
like that, like even like two
Yeah.
people with the same degrees, people like, oh yeah, they both did engineering, but that kid got ahead of the other kid, and blah blah blah. and they just go on like his capabilities, or maybe he got. And sometimes I'm like, it's luck. Like sometimes it's the opportunity doesn't
Yeah,
come.
definitely. Even if it's like, okay, so somebody gets
Yeah.
95% and then somebody gets 95.5, and that 5% would make a
In
huge
like even
difference
yeah,
in our
yeah,
cultures, I
it does.
guess.
It and people like round off and they're like, oh, it's 96 or something. Like they
Yeah.
but it's how we pit ourselves against each other just for this, um, and also we give the right to other people. Um, I've seen my mom
Mm.
slowly taking the right from other people to comment on our household, like stuff. But it also comes from like parents giving the right to other people to comment on what we want to do. Um, so like if someone wants to comment like, oh, now she will do this or she should do this, and my mom was like, yeah, she's today's kid, she'll figure it out. So like my mom doesn't let that be like,
Yeah.
oh, that
Yeah.
aunt said this, you should do this, or like something
Mm.
like that. Like
This,
she's
yeah.
like, today's kids have their own
Mm.
brain pretty much, like they will figure it out. Like,
Mm.
and obviously it's not like
Yeah.
I have my own, like of course I would discuss with my parents and see what's the right route, but
Mm.
the other people don't need to know. Like some people think that I make all the decisions myself and my parents don't get to say in it, but actually we make a collective decisions
Mm.
in our household, but
Mm.
it is discussed
Yeah.
kind of thing. But outside
Yeah.
people do sometimes want to like comment, and my mom is like, yeah, it's up to her. Like what can, we're not going to like
Yeah.
say to her
Yeah.
like do this or do that or whatever. Some people,
Yeah.
some people are like,
Yeah.
oh, now can't we even give advice? Like now can't we even like blah blah
Mm.
blah? And I'm like, I know how.
Like, think about betterment of your
No,
child
it's
or
not even
something
that.
like
I'm
that.
like, I know when you're giving the advice in a good nature and not in a good nature. What I mean to say is like, there are some people in the society, they're like really concerned and they're like, oh, maybe you can try this, or maybe your experience is in this, like, this is a new thing in the industry or something like that. They genuinely want to give advice. And some people, they just want
Mm.
to give advice because they think they know more. Like, um so
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's almost like this entitlement, like even if they're a little older than you, they feel like they've seen more
yeah.
world than you, and this entitlement that I can give advice to this person because she
Okay,
probably doesn't know.
so recently, so when a person who doesn't know about your life give advice, I don't feel, anything weird about that. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't have to listen to you. But recently there was a relative of mine. They know my house situation, that I have to be kind of available for my parents, even though I don't help them much. But sometime for medical
Mm.
reasons, they may need me. I have to rush to the hospital or something like that. So situation is a little
Mm.
bit different in my household, and the person knows the situation and they're like, oh, so now are you doing job? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, why not? And blah blah blah. I'm like, I
Mm.
don't have the time. And I actually got like little bit
Mm.
like annoyed about it, and I'm like, this person knows my family situation, and they know how much time a full-time
Yeah.
job would be, that I have to commit to it, like start a new
Mm.
job. I have to,
Mm.
go to an office. I can't just leave the office whenever and help my parents out if they need me. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying like my parents
Yeah.
need me. What I mean to say, like, they need someone to maybe drive them to somewhere, or sometimes a hospital emergency.
Mm.
I have to be
Mm.
on the beck and call for my parents, and that's a given.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and I'm like, this person knows, and I got so annoyed. I'm like, knowing my situation, you are like telling me to get a job and like have more brains. You're like more two decades older than
Mm.
me. Like, have some brains.
One thing I wanted to clarify is this privacy is not about like online privacy. It's more about privacy in terms of
Yeah, like
community.
people near you, people you interact with every day, or
Yeah.
maybe even twice a day, but just the people that are in
Mm.
your world, your bubble, and how they can
Yeah.
have this invisible effect on your decision making or your mental health. You can't put a point on it. That it's not the
Yeah.
primary pressure. You just feel it at the back of your head.
Mm.
You don't pinpoint that pressure,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this pressure is like
Mm.
your parents facing the society, or your reputation in the society,
Mm.
or what people
Mm.
will think if they know what you are doing or what you're wearing, what you're saying. And even I remember in school, my mom used to have this hesitation whenever a guy friend of mine used to come home. That's fine, but leaving the house with the guy was this whole
Mm.
uncomfortable conversation with my mom, because my mom, I knew I
Yeah.
wasn't hiding anything. The
Yeah.
guy was literally coming home, and my mom was making breakfast for him or dinner or whatever. So, and she knew there's nothing going on between us. We are just friends from school. But
Mm.
if we want to go if we want to go out and just take a for a drive or something, my mom used to feel weird, and not that she felt bad about it. It's just the society. What will someone say if they saw us together?
And most of the times, like, if a relative like sees a girl with a guy, and then they already like assume, oh, like
Yeah,
she's his
they
girlfriend,
have a
or
relationship or
like,
something,
oh,
or something like
they're,
that, and more than friends.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. And then that somehow, like, from ears to ears to ears, like reaches to your
it's not
parents'
even
ears,
that. Okay.
which they already know
Yeah.
about it, but it's like in a negative way reaches to
Yeah.
your parents, and they might feel like societal pressure of how it looks upon their
Yeah.
family.
So pretty much like your parents. So
What you
pretty
just
much like
said,
the
basically.
parents have to be the one who stops that, like, from getting affected in the
Mm.
family. And that's where I see like parents have they have to be mentally strong to stop that from
Yeah,
affecting their
yeah,
family.
definitely.
Because you need to understand, like, we would
Mm.
have the same pressure. I'm not saying for our kids, but for ourselves when we grow
Mm.
up, when they won't be telling our
Yeah.
parents, but they will telling that on our own faces, and we have to be like, we are okay with it, like, just back off, like, kind of that thing. But like, I have experienced
Mm.
this myself. And then my cousin saw me with my friend, and he called his dad, and his dad called my dad, like, Kushbu is like there and doing, being with the guy, whatever. And my
Mm.
dad doesn't know about my friends at all, and he got super worried.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then he's a very nice dad, so
Mm.
he's not like angry at me or whatever. He first talked to my mom, and to my mom he's
Mm.
like, oh, like, I got this
Mm.
call and they said Kush was with a guy, blah blah blah. And my mom said, yeah, they went from home. Like,
Oh my God.
like the kids came home, and then they went from
Yeah.
home. And like, she knows
Yeah.
him, and
Yeah.
there's nothing like that or whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm just,
I mean, this is like a perfect example of how kids should be brought up
yeah.
that way. Like, not
But you need to
thinking about all the
imagine, like,
societal
I had to
pressures.
cover myself. Like, I had to, like, make my mom
Mm.
aware every time I went with the guy. Like, he's my friend. I could have
Yeah.
gone whenever. I don't have to, like, tell someone all the time that, you know, um, where are we
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
Like, you can tell your mom, I'm going out with him. But I had to tell her, like, where we are going, what time we'll be back, which road we are taking, just so that she knew the whole thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that they can't be like, oh, we saw her there.
Yeah.
And my mom is like, but she said she's going there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are so many layers in even telling that.
Yeah. And I guess it's also comes down to like the relation between privacy and like personal
Yeah.
space. Because being in a country where like the population is huge and you like live together as a community, and there is not much like space between neighbors, or like most of the windows are like open, they know
They
what
can look into each
the
other's
neighbors
houses.
are going through, like they
Yeah.
can hear. Yeah, that's how like population kind of like affects privacy and personal space as well. So if you don't have personal space, and if people are all over your personal space, they get to know more about you, or more like they can see like what you're doing, or like how you behave, stuff like that. So you don't actually get privacy if you have less personal space, and that's how population affects it. That's what I
Okay.
wanted to say. That got so long. I just like wanted to say like one line, and I was like, blah, 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 blah,
See,
blah.
where I want to say is like
Yeah.
neighbors knowing your stuff is all not bad. Like there is this other aspect I want to discuss, which is the good aspect of it, which is neighbors kind of
Yeah.
helping each other. Like if they know, like, okay, they are going through this issue, you know, they can be just um this
Like you can expect them to stand up
yeah,
for you
like there's so many
if
neighbors.
something is,
Yeah,
yeah,
so like
going
I've
wrong.
heard so many, like
Yeah.
I should look up a proper news, but there was on television, you know, there was we have this called like Savdhan India or something. They are like pretty much true
Mm.
crime stories portrayed, right? And
Mm.
there are a lot of stories where they show
Mm.
that the neighbors knew something shady is going on, like the woman is being abused or
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah.
then they're like looking from their house and peeping into someone else's house, which is pretty much
Mm.
invasion of privacy. But
Mm.
that invasion of
Yeah.
invasion of privacy maybe saved a woman one day. Like they called the police and they visited the house, and like
Yeah,
they
definitely.
saved the woman or
Mm.
whoever was being abused. So things like that, or even like
Mm.
someone needs medical issue or something, and they don't have someone to like, they don't
Attention.
have someone
Yeah.
to drive, and the neighbors are like ready to help,
Yeah.
and with one call they're there with their
Mm.
car and they're like
Mm.
taken to the medical. Or even if
Mm.
someone lives alone, like
Yeah.
there's a alone old lady or an old guy, and the neighbors are taking care of him just to check in on him, like if he's okay, if he's
Mm.
not,
Mm.
like things like that. Like
Mm.
community could be a very
Mm.
powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's very positive because
Yeah, I have a story
yeah,
relating to this. So one day I was walking down the street with my sister, la 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 la, and then suddenly I get like hit by um uh, a
yeah,
trailer's door. Like it suddenly opened
yeah,
and then it hit me. And then so I was like, my head was like bleeding and my sister fainted. And like I was almost like 2 minutes
yeah,
outside my house. It wasn't that far away. And then I called my mom, and then we didn't have a car in the house, and I was bleeding profusely, and we needed to go to the hospital. And then a random person, I don't even know, we don't even know this person, they're like, oh, like, come on, I'll take you
yeah,
to the hospital. And then we went there and we said thank you, and
yeah,
that's all. Like I can't even think of that happening in like here in Australia, because I mean, of course they have like
yeah,
ambulances and stuff, but I hardly think like anybody would stop for like
else, yeah.
anybody else to help them to take to the hospital. Yeah, I
but
mean, it depends
but
on the
that's the
person as
thing I
well,
like
but
about
yeah.
the community and the society in India, that we are pretty helpful. Like it comes in our
Mm,
nature. Like if someone needs help, we
yeah,
jump
yeah.
on it. Like we try to help each other. It's not about something personal or whatever. Like if
Mm,
someone needs dire help,
mm,
we are there. And it doesn't matter what kind of
yeah.
person. Like it has to be a very bad person to not to help. Like otherwise we are kind of
Mm.
like
Yeah.
generally pretty helpful with each other. Like even my parents, if they don't communicate with the society or whatever, but if someone would need very, like, you know, help, they would help someone, you know, if they are in a
Mm,
situation like that. So people shouldn't like
yeah,
judge
definitely.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes people who are that nosy, they don't help, and someone who never talk to you will help you. So it's like,
Mm. Well, depends
but
on the
that's the whole
person.
thing.
But I guess like in this, yeah. So basically, like in this collectivist society, because everyone thinks of like community and everyone's like togetherness all the time. So helping kind of comes, it's more about like if you help someone, then you do it like for your own personal
Yeah.
satisfaction. Like you generally feel good about helping people, but that's also like
But
expected
what
out
we
of
want to
you.
say in the end is, regarding privacy, there is this one very thin line between invasion and someone just being, you know, I don't know about the other side, but very thin line that they will cross and it would be invasion of privacy. Like,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
you could be a very good neighbor if you have that relationship being an old neighbor or an old friend to the family. You can share and you can listen, and they won't go and spill it in front of like 10 different people, and that's just having a
Yes.
friend. But to a random person, they don't get to come and question what are they doing, what will they do, what is their next plan, like, which I don't know.
Yeah. Just like wanting to know your life
Yeah,
history for
like
no
I
reason
would
at all.
rather you
Just
just
so that they
I'm
can
like, you
talk
just
about it.
rather you just ask, are you guys okay? Yeah, I'm okay. How are you? You okay? Good. Bye.
Mm.
Like, if you want to increase your relationship, have a tea or something. Like, come over for tea. Like,
Yeah.
first build a relationship where we could be comfortable enough to like open up to you. But just because you are in the same bubble as us or the society or the neighborhood, I can't just open up to you just because we live in the same area or the same circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, helping each other is good. Sharing sadness is, less. Don't they say like if you share your sadness, it lessens. If you share your happiness, it increases. So I'm
Yes.
not saying
Yeah.
societies
Yeah.
shouldn't share with each other. It's just like it should be on your terms, not the other person's terms.
Yeah.
If you liked our topic for this week and would like someone else to listen to this podcast and know more about this topic, please feel free to share. Also, if you have any thoughts regarding this topic and would like to suggest a new one for the future, please feel free to comment, discuss, or DM us or any of our social media platforms.
We are Browned Off by Society for Facebook, YouTube, and Insta, and Brown Society for Twitter. Or email us at brownedoffbysociety@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to know more about today's topic, head on to our Insta and Facebook. And finally, thank you for listening to us today, and see you next time. Bye!